Number 1, Mr. John Greenway.
Number 1, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. I also participated in the deputation from this House, which attended on Her Majesty the Queen Mother. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. John Greenway.
Would my right honourable friend agree that the defeat of inflation demands that, as well as central government, local authorities must also exercise restraint and responsibility in their spending plans? What conclusions does she draw from the fact that North Yorkshire County Council, under Conservative control, increased its spending this year by less than any other shire county, and yet regularly achieves some of the best exam results in the country, while the actions of high-spending Derbyshire County Council under Labour have been declared in the High Court to be vindictive, illegal and a flagrant abuse of power?
Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. Sound financial discipline is crucial to good management control of the economy. I congratulate the Yorkshire Council upon their record and most especially on their very good education record on a comparatively low community charge, lower than other people. It shows that it can be done. It's not the amount that is spent, but the way the taxpayers' and chargepayers' money is managed.
Mr. Neil Kinnock. Order. Mr. Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister accept that the concern about the family which she expressed in her speech yesterday is widely shared and indeed praiseworthy? Given that concern, can she tell us what she thinks most damages families? Is it the highest mortgage rate in history? Is it the poll tax that's been imposed? Is it the freeze-on-chain benefit or the abandonment of community care?
Mr. Speaker, the greatest support we can give in material terms to families is to keep the economy going so that it produces the highest number of jobs we've ever had in our history, the highest standard of living we've ever had in our history, the best social services, and then, as I've indicated in my speech yesterday, to give particular support to lone parent families.
Mr. Speaker, that reply shows that there is an unbridgeable gap between what the Prime Minister says is her concern about the family and what she's actually prepared to do about it. Doesn't she understand that the announcement made yesterday that the government is ratting on its pledge to provide help for people who care for disabled and elderly people at home is a contempt for some of the most needy and certainly some of the most deserving people in the whole of the land?
May I remind the right honourable gentleman that local authorities are spending half as much again on personal social services over and above inflation than they were in 1979. There are 22% more daycare places, 26% more home helps, 13% more meals served to the elderly and disabled, and as for government support for the elderly in nursing and residential homes, for every £1 Labour spent, we are spending £100. They talk, we deliver the goods.
So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister explain to the House and to millions of people outside it why the government is effectively forbidding the necessary help to be given to people who are caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's disease, with dreadfully disabling diseases, saving the community and the taxpayer billions of pounds? Why is the Prime Minister ratted on the promise she made?
Mr. Speaker, as the right honourable gentleman knows, certain aspects of community care are going ahead. He also knows, as I indicated, their own record in government of looking after the elderly. Of course they don't want to hear about it. They only want to hear the hot air that the right honourable gentleman calls out. For every £1 the last Labour government spent on residential and nursing homes for the elderly, this government is spending £100 because we have created the wealth, looked after it well, and then saw that it got to some of the people who needed it.
Mrs. Anne Winterton.
My right honourable friend do all within her power to ensure that the corridors of peace in Angola are opened to allow urgent humanitarian aid to reach all needy Angolans, bearing in mind the terrible famine that is afflicting that country at present.
Mr. Speaker, it is beyond our power to keep those corridors open, but as my honourable friend knows, where we receive urgent requests for humanitarian aid, because people are greatly in need of food and water, we usually meet them.
Mr. Alistair Darling.
For 2 seconds.
I defer the honourable gentleman to reply which I gave some moments ago.
Darling.
As the Prime Minister now says she's concerned with the family, why did she block the EC directive that would have given 3 months parental leave per child? And haven't we got something to learn from the West Germans, who in addition to having a very successful economy, give 12 months parental leave per child, soon to go up to 18 months, and in addition to that, give 14 weeks paid maternity leave?
Mr. Speaker, the draft directive of which the honourable gentleman speaks will not be published until September.
Mr. Matthew Carrington. Number 3.
I defer my honourable friend to reply which I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Carrington.
Is my right honourable friend aware that in a recent list of the world's top 500 companies, Britain had the 3rd highest number, second only to Japan and the United States of America, and way ahead of our European partners? Does she agree that this gives the lie to those people who never miss an opportunity, either at home or abroad, to run down our industrial performance?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I saw the report. 43 British companies are represented on that list, the 3rd best number after the United States and Japan. We should also realise that of the 50 best performing companies in the European community, 28 are British. They are performing well, and we have great opportunities for more businesses to be set up under this government. As he knows, 1,700 net new businesses a week have been set up during the lifetime of this particular government in this year.
Mr. Ashdown.
Speaker, does the Prime Minister now regret her support for the barbarians of the Khmer Rouge?
Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated to the right honourable gentleman, we have never supported the Khmer Rouge at all. What we did support was an alliance under Prince Sihanouk, which happened to include the Khmer Rouge, for a seat in the United Nations along with many other people. We indicated that consideration we would look at it again along with our other permanent member partners in the United Nations. The right honourable gentleman should also remember the goodly number of the Hun Sen government of Cambodia were also members of the Khmer Rouge.
Sir Michael McNair Wilson.
Pause.
Honourable friend replied I gave some moments ago.
Sir Michael McNair Wilson.
Open the fraternal backing by asking my right honourable friend whether she is aware that it takes between 13 and 15 years for a major road bypass scheme like that announced for Newbury today to be approved and completed. In view of the importance of the road programme to our nation's economy, could I suggest to her that it would be wholly beneficial if we could find a way of reducing the cumbersome and long drawn-out planning procedures to enable new roads to be completed more swiftly.
Mr. Speaker, I have a good deal of sympathy with what my honourable friend says. The problem is to balance the needs for public consultation and the right to make objections with the need to get on to get the roads done, because the longer it takes, the more, in fact, the price has gone up in the past, and we need to get those roads built. We shall be having a planning bill It's expected in the next session of this Parliament, and we hope and believe that that will contain measures to enable higher compensation to be given for those whose property is compulsorily purchased, and that too should help to speed the process.
Mr. McGuinness!
No doubt the Prime Minister will have been dismayed by the Supreme Court ruling in Dublin in the McGimsey and McGimsey versus Ireland case, where it was found that the Anglo-Irish agreement was complementary to the territorial claim enshrined in Articles 2 and 3 of the Irish Constitution. What will the Prime Minister now do to support her right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, in his efforts to bring political peace to Northern Ireland and to overcome the obstructiveness of the Irish Republic's government?
Speaker, as the honourable gentleman is aware, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, has the full support of Her Majesty's government, and I believe of most people, in trying to find a good basis for the peoples of Northern Ireland to go ahead together to find a better basis for government in the province. He has our full support, and I hope he'll be successful in his efforts.
Sir Patrick Wilson.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Sir Patrick.
Would my right honourable friend not agree with me that the current strength of sterling on the world markets is further evidence of the correctness of her government's economic policy? And is it not clear that the people of this country can now look forward to lower inflation and falling interest rates in the months that lie ahead, now that the difficulties of the 1987 crash have been finally exorcised?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. It's a great vote of confidence in my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's policies, that a strong pound will exert downward pressure on unit wage costs, which will mean that our goods become more competitive and we can continue the upward amount of exports. We prefer a strong pound, whether in or outside the exchange rate mechanism, or to put it the other way around, whether outside or eventually in the exchange rate mechanism.
Mr. Ron Brown.
Prime Minister.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Ron Brown.
Your government, Prime Minister, encourages state schools and hospitals to opt out. These are spurious rights, of course. But what about Scotland? Isn't it entitled to opt out of the system too? Isn't it entitled to have its own parliament? Or is that extending democracy too far? If it isn't, I think you should have a word with Mr. Gorbachev, because he will argue for self-determination and has indicated that much.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the health service, hospitals in Scotland may become self-governing. That is not opting out of the health service. It is a different way of being governed within the health service. As far as schools are concerned, as the honourable gentleman is aware, it takes longer, because whereas in England all schools had school boards or courts of governors, in Scotland that was not the case, and we had to set up those boards initially before we could proceed to the next stage.
Mr. Derek Conway.
Number 7, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Derek Conway.
Mr. Speaker, sir, is my right honourable friend aware that in the county of Shropshire there are more than 2,000 beds in private nursing homes and homes for the elderly? Is it not staggering that under this government over £990 million is being spent on supporting those elderly in those homes, as opposed to the £10 million under the last Labour government? Aren't their weasel words ultimately their downfall?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend. It's the message I've been trying to get across to them during this question time. We have, in fact, perhaps talked rather less than they do, but spent a lot more on looking after those who are sick and ill, and also the benefits for the carers have increased enormously under this government. For example, spending on invalid care allowance has increased from 8 million in 1979 to over 180 million now. They talk, we act.